Before the Vikings, before the Inuit, there were others. Around 2500 BCE, humans reached Greenland for the first time. We know this not from stories, but from stone. Along Greenland's western coast, archaeologists find tools made from kiliak, a specific type of stone that appears suddenly in the record and then spreads north and south. It does not form naturally everywhere, which means someone carried it. These people left no writing, no graves marked with names, but they left camps so thin they suggest movement over permanence. Short stays, repeated again and again, always close to the sea. For nearly 2,000 years, this pattern holds. Then it stops, not everywhere at once, not violently, just gone. This film is not about legends or lost civilizations. It's about how we reconstruct human survival at the edge of the possible, and what Greenland reveals when the ground itself becomes the record. The earliest evidence of human life in Greenland does not appear inland. It appears along the western coast, clustered, repeated, and deliberate. At sites around Disco Bay, archaeologists find thin occupation layers, hearths rebuilt in the same spots, broken tools replaced, food remains concentrated near shorelines. One of the most studied sites is Saqqaq. Here, frozen ground preserved what normally disappears: wood, sinew, bone, even fragments of skin boats. These finds tell us something precise. The people living here were not settling permanently. They were returning, again and again, to the same coastal locations, following seal migrations and seasonal ice conditions. Their tools confirm it. Stone blades made from kiliak dominate the record, reshaped repeatedly rather than discarded. Bone harpoon tips are sized for seals, not large game. Inland hunting exists in the record, but it is rare. This was not a society spreading outward across the land. It was one orbiting the sea. Archaeologists call this culture the Saqqaq culture. But what matters is not the name. What matters is the pattern. For nearly 2,000 years, the evidence repeats the same message. Short stays, light structures, tools designed to be repaired rather than replaced. In Greenland, permanence was a liability. Mobility was the system. For nearly 2,000 years, the archaeological record stays remarkably consistent. Coastal camps appear. Tools are repaired. The same materials circulate through the same regions. Then, slowly, that consistency weakens. At later Saqqaq sites, something changes. Not dramatically, but measurably. Occupation layers become thinner. Some coastal sites stop being reused at all. At places once visited repeatedly, archaeologists find a final hearth, but no return. Toolkits simplify. Fewer specialized implements appear in the record. Repairs become less frequent. This matters because in a system built on mobility and precision, simplification is not efficiency. It's stress. At the same time, environmental data begins to diverge from earlier patterns. Ice cores from Greenland show increasing climate instability, not a single catastrophic cooling, but greater year-to-year variation. For a hunting society dependent on predictable seal behavior, unpredictability is the real threat. The archaeological record reflects this. Sites that once tracked seasonal seal migrations no longer align with later ice conditions. The people did not suddenly fail. Their system lost its margin. By around 800 BCE, Saqqaq material culture disappears entirely from Greenland. No replacement layer follows immediately. No evidence of conflict. No signs of mass death. Just a break in continuity, which tells us something important. The Saqqaq were not defeated by Greenland. They were outpaced by change. After the Saqqaq disappear, Greenland goes quiet, not metaphorically, archaeologically. For centuries, large parts of the island show no clear evidence of human occupation at all. Excavated sites that once held repeated Saqqaq camps contain no later layers above them, no rebuilt hearths, no repaired tools, no new materials introduced. This absence is not the result of erosion or poor preservation. In many regions, preservation is excellent. The layers are simply missing, which tells us something uncomfortable. Greenland was not continuously inhabited. It was entered, tested, and sometimes abandoned. When humans returned, they did not resume the old pattern. They brought a different one. By roughly the first millennium BCE, a new material culture appears in the Arctic. Thinner stone blades, differently shaped harpoon heads, tools designed for working through sea ice rather than around it. Archaeologists group these finds under what is called the Dorset culture. What matters is not the name, but the shift. Whether Saqqaq focused on open water and seasonal movement, the Dorset oriented their lives around stable winter ice. Seal hunting through breathing holes becomes central. Camps appear farther north. The ice itself becomes infrastructure. This is not continuity, it is reinvention. Greenland did not preserve a single lineage of survival. It demanded new solutions, even from people already adapted to the Arctic. The gap in the record is not a failure of evidence. It is the evidence. It shows that in Greenland, survival is not cumulative. Each generation must solve the problem again. The people archaeologists call the Dorset culture did not simply adapt to Greenland. They specialized for it. Their tools tell us exactly how. Dorset harpoon heads are smaller and more standardized than those of earlier cultures, shaped for seals hunted through breathing holes in stable winter ice. This was not opportunistic hunting. It required patience, timing, and intimate knowledge of how ice forms and fractures. Dorset sites reflect this shift. Camps appear farther north than most earlier Saqqaq sites. Many are positioned near areas of persistent sea ice, rather than open water. The ice itself becomes predictable terrain, something to build a yearly cycle around. Unlike later Arctic cultures, the Dorset did not use dog sleds. There is no evidence of large boats capable of hunting whales. Their technology was precise, but narrow. This precision worked remarkably well for centuries. Dorset communities expanded across Greenland and much of the eastern Canadian Arctic. The archaeological record shows continuity, not improvisation. The same tool forms, the same hunting strategies, repeated again and again. But this stability carried a hidden cost. A system built entirely around predictable ice becomes fragile the moment ice behavior changes. And by the late first millennium CE, it does. Environmental data shows increasing variability in sea ice formation, earlier breakups, unstable winter surfaces, shifting seal behavior. The Dorset toolkit does not diversify in response. It remains specialized, which tells us something critical. The Dorset were not failing to survive Greenland. They were surviving it too precisely. When the ice stopped behaving as expected, their system had nowhere to go. Around 1200 CE, a new material culture appears in Greenland. The change is immediate in the archaeological record. Larger tools, new hunting debris, evidence of technologies that did not exist in Greenland before. Archaeologists group these remains under the Thule culture. What distinguishes the Thule is not that they were better hunters, but that they built redundancy into survival itself. Their sites contain remains of large open-water boats capable of hunting whales. This is not a minor upgrade. Whaling produces food, fuel, and building material at a scale no earlier Greenlandic culture could access. One successful hunt could support an entire community through winter. The Thule also brought dogs. For the first time, long-distance overland travel across ice becomes routine rather than exceptional. Dog sleds allow rapid movement between seasonal camps, transport of heavy loads, and access to distant hunting grounds when local conditions fail. This matters because it changes how risk works. Earlier cultures optimized for a narrow set of conditions. The Thule diversified. If sea ice failed, open water could still be used. If local game disappeared, communities could move quickly and with supplies. Their architecture reflects the same logic. Semi-subterranean winter houses, built from stone, sod, and whalebone, are warmer, more durable, and designed for reuse over multiple years. Storage becomes central. Knowledge transfer becomes deliberate. This is not adaptation by reaction. It is adaptation by design. When climate conditions fluctuate, as they increasingly do after 1200, the Thule system absorbs the shock rather than collapsing under it. And for the first time in Greenland's archaeological record, something new appears: continuity without disappearance. The Thule do not vanish. Their material culture evolves, but it does not end. This is the foundation of modern Inuit life in Greenland. Not because Greenland became predictable, but because unpredictability was finally accounted for. Around 985 CE, a second survival system enters Greenland. Ships arrive from Iceland carrying families, livestock, iron tools, and European assumptions about land. Archaeologists call this world Norse Greenland. The Norse settle only in the island's southwest, where fjords allow limited grazing. They build stone farms, raise cattle, sheep, and goats, construct churches oriented east, toward Europe. For several centuries, the system works. The archaeological record shows stable farmsteads, repaired buildings, and long-term occupation. Walrus ivory leaves Greenland. European goods arrive in return. But this system is structurally different from the Thule one. Norse survival depends on fixed locations, on grass that must regrow each summer, on ships that must arrive regularly from overseas. The Thule system depends on none of this. It assumes movement, variability, redundancy. Archaeological evidence suggests the two groups were aware of each other. Norse sites contain occasional Arctic-style tools. Thule sites show traces of European metal reworked into hunting implements. This is contact, but not convergence. The Norse do not adopt dog-sled transport. They do not build large skin boats for whaling. Their diet remains dominated by livestock and limited seal hunting, even as conditions worsen. By the 13th century, stress markers begin to appear. Isotopic analysis of Norse bones shows increasing reliance on marine food, a late adaptation, not a designed one. Farm abandonment accelerates. European trade becomes irregular, then rare. When climate variability increases during the later medieval period, the Norse system has no buffer. Where the Thule can reroute, the Norse must wait, and Greenland does not reward waiting. By the early 1500s, Norse material culture disappears from the record. No final battle, no sudden collapse layer, just empty farms, roofless churches, and a system that required stability in a land that removes it. Across more than 4,500 years, Greenland did not host a single human story. It ran an experiment. Again and again, different societies entered the same environment, each with its own tools, assumptions, and limits. The Saqqaq built a system optimized for movement along the coast. It worked until climate variability exceeded their margin. The Dorset engineered precision around stable sea ice. It worked until that stability disappeared. The Norse imported a European system built on fixed land, livestock, and distant trade. It worked until Greenland removed the connections it depended on. Only one system persisted without interruption, not because it dominated the land, but because it treated uncertainty as a constant. The Thule system did not rely on a single food source, not on a single travel method, not on a single season behaving correctly. It assumed failure and planned around it. That is what Greenland selects for, not strength, not intelligence, not even experience. Flexibility built into structure. When conditions change, traditions that cannot bend break quietly. Greenland does not erase people with violence. It removes their margins. And when the margin is gone, disappearance does not look dramatic. It looks like empty camps, silent farms, and layers of earth where nothing comes after. Greenland is not unique because it is harsh. It is unique because it is honest. It exposes which survival systems are resilient and which only work when the world stays still.